This time on the crazy world of CEX, we are starting off our search in Great Yarmouth, then heading inland to the city of Ipswich. It may be an enemy of Norwich, but it's alright in my books. Then finishing off in the cultural town of Felixstowe. All this coming up in the crazy world of CEX. Welcome to my continuing mission to visit every CEX store in the entire world. From the weird to the wonderful, the big to the small, I am here to visit them all. This is the crazy world of CEX. Hello again, folks, and welcome back to the crazy world of CEX. My continuing adventure to visit every single CEX store in the entire world and build an incredible game collection. This time we are back visiting 3 brand new stores here in the UK. We are starting off on the seaside in Great Yarmouth, then heading a little further inland to the city of Ipswich and finishing off in the largest container port in the UK, Felixstowe. If this is your first time watching the crazy world of CEX, at the end of each episode after visiting 3 brand new stores, I always return to my local store of Norwich because there is nothing like your local CEX store. If you have missed any of the episodes so far in this series of the crazy world of CEX, I'll link them all down below in a playlist so you never miss an episode. When it comes to game collecting and especially shopping in CEX, it's all about knowing the right time to buy. Buying a game when it's at its cheapest. Prices rise and fall over the years, but you can kind of get an idea of what games are going to become more valuable in the future, either as an investment opportunity or as a collector like myself, so you don't have to spend more down the line. And this time we're going to be looking for games specifically for the collection that I think are cheap now, but in the coming years are going to become very, very desirable. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that like button and please subscribe, as I put new videos out every Saturday live at 5, as well as bonus content throughout the week, and I really want you folks along for the ride. Now, let's hit the road to our first CEX store. We're starting off this time in the crazy world of CEX at Great Yarmouth. Beside the sea, it is a lovely sunny day and we are heading straight to the glass cabinet of dreams, and there's some really good retro in here. A lot of loose stuff, but some really nice box stuff as well, including this very, very clean copy of Pokemon Red. £110. It is slowly creeping up, but it's difficult to find these in really good condition, much like a lot of these Master System games. It's very hard to tell here, but I did pick up one of these Master System games and it is in really, really nice condition, and a lot of amiibos in this store. For me, when buying retro games, condition is everything. And this is why I love to go into the CEX store, because you can actually check for yourself the condition of these games. And it just has to be in really nice condition for me. Like games like this Star Wing aren't quite there. There's quite a lot of superficial damage. And of course, I do want the game to be complete. And this is one of the advantages. Of course, you can do the CEX roulette and order games online, but it's just so much better to go into the store and see for yourself the condition of these games. Like this Pokemon Stadium here is in really nice condition. And even if it's like a cheaper game like Turok and Turok Rage Wars here at the back, I'm still looking for them to be in really nice condition, because it's only going to get harder down the following years to get these games in really nice condition. But let me know, for the prices you pay in CEX for these games, are you looking for mint games or are you just looking for really good condition? For me, as long as it's boxed and complete and in about a 7 or 8 out of 10 condition, you know, as long as there's no major rips or tears, I can go for stickers on the boxes, because at the end of the day, those can be easily removed. Now, I've seen some crazy stuff in my years of visiting CEX, but I've never seen this before. A 3-month PlayStation Plus membership for the PlayStation 4, PlayStation 3 and the Vita. I cannot believe they actually sell these for 20 quid. Obviously, I'm sure they have to be sealed, but who is picking these up in 2023? Of course, like any CEX store, it's not just the glass cabinets of dreams that are absolutely full of games. There is every generation of games, as well as Blu-rays and DVDs to be found in this CEX store. I would say this is about a middle-sized store. It's not too big, it's not too small, but it has a little bit of everything I love collecting. And without a doubt, one of my favourite consoles to collect for is the OG Xbox. And I've noticed some of these games are getting steadily more expensive. Games like a Psychonauts here, this is definitely getting more expensive. A lot of these games I think a lot of people overlook. But there is one game on the shelf here that I've been looking for a long time. But unlike my PlayStation Platinum games, I'm looking for the full artwork release. So hopefully soon I can find a copy of Tony Hawk's 3. This one's fairly cheap and I want to add it to the collection. This is a section of CEX that is getting smaller and smaller, the Wii U section, and we even have some of the games here with reprinted covers, which I'm not going to pick up, But if I can find any Wii U games I do not have for my collection cheap, I'm going to grab them now, because I genuinely believe in the next few years the Wii U is going to become very, very collectible. A lot of these games had quite short print runs, even though there's 2 copies of Avengers, so for £3, I'm grabbing this now. Very much like the Wii U section, it seems the Gamecube section gets smaller and smaller every time I visit CEX, but there's still some incredible titles, and these are steadily going up in price. I'm sure a lot of these have gone up about £5 or £10 in the past 2 years. There are so many good games for the Gamecube, but you can still pick up some real cheap bargains for this. Games such as Rayman, which is only £12. And of course, a cheap way to buy games for a lot of collections is buying like the Player's Choice, the Best of, the Platinum games. I did pass on this one today, as when I collect for the Gamecube, I do prefer to go for the Black Label games. And I'm really still surprised the 007 games, even though not as good as GoldenEye, are so very cheap. Here we have a rather sizable PlayStation 4 section here in Great Yarmouth, and there is one subsection of PlayStation 4 collecting that I think is super cheap at the moment, but in the coming years is going to go up in price, and that is PlayStation VR games. So I think now is the time to pick these up while they're cheap. Even the hardware is super cheap now. Now, I bought this fairly early on when it was released. I bought it on Black Friday and got a fantastic deal, but for the money, especially now at its cheaper rate, I think there's no better time to collect for PlayStation VR. The PlayStation 5 is getting to its age where now there is some cheaper games for the system. Games such as Deathloop, which you can now pick up for just £10, and I think will get even cheaper. Games like the Avengers, which is terrible, so leave it on the shelf. Games like Watch Dogs Legion. A lot of these Ubisoft games get very cheap very quick. And as the PlayStation 5 gets a little bit older and more people have access to this amazing console, I think the games will just get cheaper and cheaper. Now, I said at the start of this video, one of the key things when picking up games cheap is knowing the time to buy. And unfortunately, with the closure of the digital 3DS store, I think I kind of missed the boat on 3DS games. I think a few months ago you could pick up a lot of these games super cheap, and you can still pick up some of these games cheap, but I think the cheaper prices are probably a thing of the past. I think 3DS games are going to get steadily more and more expensive. Not saying I haven't got a decent 3DS collection at the moment, there's just certain games which I wish I'd picked up before because I know I could get them cheaper, and arguably I probably should buy these games now before they go up in value anymore, but I still again keep passing up some of these cheaper games. But let me know in the comments down below, are you still buying 3DS games? Heading to the checkout, and hiding behind was this Nintendo Entertainment System. It was in fairly good condition. I do actually have this exact console in my collection already, thankfully in much better condition, because when it comes to these retro games, it is all about condition. So that was Great Yarmouth, the first stop in today's episode of the crazy world of CEX. But we're not stopping there, we are heading further inland to Ipswich, and this is a store that's a lot bigger on the inside than it seems. Now, this store does look quite big, but you could easily miss half of this store, but more on that later. It's a pretty large store, but much bigger than you expect. But heading straight over to the Glass Cabinet of Dreams, there is some really good retro in here, including the lesser spotted 32X. I would love to add this to my collection to make the Sega Mega Drive Tower of Power, but much like the Game Boy player for the Gamecube, it is super expensive. It is some of these add-ons that are just getting more and more expensive. Even like Wavebird controllers and Game Boy printers, even though both of those were pretty faded, which is one of the problems with a lot of this retro plastic. It does fade in the sunlight. There's also some pretty decent box retro here, but I just don't understand why CEX absolutely cover these in stickers. It's so hard to see the condition of these without asking to get them out. Then obviously you have to look at every single game you want to look at individually. It's a small complaint, but it is kind of annoying. You can only look at one game at a time, but I've never seen it before, but maybe people do snatch and run from CEX. I'm sure crazier things have happened in the crazy world of CEX, but let me know if you've ever seen anyone run away with one of these games. But what is this hiding at the back? A copy of Tron Bonne for the PlayStation 1 with the eye-watering price of £260. A lot of these retro games are getting super expensive, and the Mega Man series especially, because it is so collectible and so desirable, is really, really expensive and has a very high price tag. Now, you may be wondering why I didn't pick this up, and for me, a lot of the reasons I pick up games is for nostalgia, and I never played this game back in my childhood, otherwise I'd have picked it up, and in a way, I'm kind of glad I didn't. I don't emulate very often, but for the price tag, this is the kind of game that I'd probably emulate. I said this CEX store is bigger than you expect. That is because it has an absolutely ginormous basement, and I'm sure you can probably guess what's going to be in the basement because CEX puts so much floor space into DVDs. Like, look at this absolutely humongous selection of DVDs, and most of these were like £1. You can see the shelves of £1 DVDs. But I suppose if people trading games for a penny, they're making a profit. The thing is though, it's not just DVDs, and I could have quite easily missed this massive retro game section. I just never expected this to be hiding in a corner downstairs behind all of the DVDs, and straight to the Wii U section and see if there's any games here that I need for my collection. And this Minecraft story mode is a game that I do need for the Wii U, but can you let me know if you know down in the comments, can you play the full game, or is it something you have to download and as of such can no longer download it? It'd be really interesting to know if you know down in the comments below. This was a reasonably big Wii U section. And also a reasonably sized Gamecube section. And one game I have been looking for a while is Freedom Fighters, but I don't really know if the video does this justice, but it looked like it was kind of water damaged and warped, so I did leave it behind. As with any video games, condition is everything, and if it's not in great shape, I'm not going to pick it up. Moving on to the PlayStation 2 section, and never before in my crazy trip around CEX have I seen this many copies of the same game. Let me know in the comments down below if you've ever seen a CEX store with this many copies of one particular game. And it wasn't just Pro Evo. Look how many copies of iPlay they have. I know this is a common game, and I think they trade this in for 1p. Who is taking these to CEX? Heading over to the Xbox 360 section, and I do not think there is a better time than now to collect for the Xbox 360, and this is an absolutely huge selection of games here. All around the UK, these Xbox 360 sections are getting smaller and smaller, so to see a section of this size is an absolute find, and an even better find is a game which, mark my words, will get more expensive in the next few years. It is Silent Hill Homecoming. I still cannot believe you can buy this game in CEX at the moment for just £15. Yes, the box was a little bit ropey, but that could be replaced, but this is complete, and it has a really cool reversible sleeve. And trust me, for £15, buy this now while it's cheap. Remember that Tony Hawk's game from earlier on in today's video we found in CEX with a value cover? Here it is with the full artwork, and yes, I'm definitely picking this one up. I just don't see this one very often. I don't think it's an overtly rare game, but I think a lot of these were pressed with the greatest hits kind of cover, so if I can get this perfect cover like this, I'm grabbing it. The original Xbox is such an overlooked console and has some of the very best games from that gen, such as Star Wars Jedi Knight, which is an absolutely incredible Star Wars game. Sadly, this one was a little bit rough, so I did leave it behind. And who can forget one of the most iconic characters in the early 2000s, Shadow the Gun-Toed Hedgehog. It certainly seems that Ipswich loves the Xbox. Headed back upstairs, and there was this really large Xbox One section. Again, a fantastic console to collect for. Sadly, nothing I needed for the collection this time, but it's a really cheap and really fun console to collect for. Speaking of the Xbox One, and very similar to the amount of Pro Evos they had for the PlayStation 2, look how many FIFA games they have for the Xbox One. Fantastic if you need a case. I'd given the Xbox a lot of love while in Ipswich, so I thought I'd have a look for some PlayStation VR games for the PlayStation 4, and this game, Fruit Ninja, which I think is surprisingly expensive. For a game which, correct me if I'm wrong, was originally a mobile game, I think £8 is quite expensive, but it may be one of those games that gets way more expensive down the line, so maybe I'm making a mistake leaving that one behind. Iron Man is a game which I'm sure was around £25–30 all the time, and has suddenly dropped quite a lot in CEX, which is quite good. And one last VR game while we're in Ipswich, Ultra Wings, which if you have not seen it before, looks like a throwback to kind of the Pilot Wings games from the SNES and the N64, and even better, if you're one of these people who get migraines or headaches while playing PlayStation VR, it can be played in the standard mode. Now, I don't know if you can still play it like this, but it's a cool one. I kind of wish I picked it up, but I did pass today. Speaking of PlayStation VR, I think this must be the first time I have seen this, PlayStation VR 2 in CEX. And honestly, at a surprisingly decent price. Our final stop this time in this episode of the crazy world of CEX is Felixstowe. And I always think of Felixstowe as just being like a port. I never knew Felixstowe was this nice. I think it's one of those towns that just gets a really bad rep. And look at this. This was an absolutely glorious summer day, and it just looks absolutely fantastic. It kind of felt a little bit French. It felt really nice. It was very much the land that time forgot, but we're here for one thing, and that is to head to CEX. So let's do that right now. Our final stop is Felixstowe. Taking a look in the front window, we have here one of my favourite N64 games, Duke Nukem 64. I have so many awesome memories of playing this couch co-op with one of my friends when we were in high school, just laughing at the absolutely terrible humour of the Duke himself. Heading inside, and I would definitely say this falls into the category of the smaller CEX store. It's not tiny, and it's by far and away not the smallest CEX store in the world, but you don't judge a CEX store by its size, you judge it by its glass cabinet of dreams. And inside we again have some really nice boxed N64, some loose NES, some loose N64, and some really good PlayStation 2 games. I can't believe they had nearly all of the Silent Hill games for the PlayStation 2 hiding in this one store. And here, hiding at the back, is some Gamecube games. And you can still get some really cheap Gamecube bangers, and that is exactly what I did. I picked up 2 really cheap Gamecube games in here because you can still get some cheap Gamecube games. They're not necessarily bad games, they're still fantastic and they're still cheap, especially because I've already picked up a lot of the heavy hitters for the Gamecube because I picked them up a few years ago before the prices rise, and that is the way to do things, to try and pick games up cheap before they raise, because in years to come, stuff like this, boxed in 64, are going to get very, very expensive. As I said earlier in this episode, there's no better time than now to collect for the Xbox 360, but these sections are definitely getting smaller. But let me know in the comments down below, would you still pick up this, the Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary Edition? Because for me, collecting games is all about playing the best version. I think the best version is on the Master Chief Collection. Here is a game which needs a remaster, Need for Speed Carbon. Now, if this had had the slipcase on, I would have definitely picked this up. But with collector's editions, even if they are quite basic like this, I want the complete package. And as I always said, I always keep an eye out for Xbox 360 games I've never seen, ever seen this one before. Much like the Xbox 360 section, I think the PlayStation 2 sections are going to get smaller and smaller in the coming years, which is quite surprising for a console which, correct me if I'm wrong, has sold the most copies of games ever and also has one of the biggest libraries. But again, here we have the Wii U section. Again, this is what it normally looks like in most stores. Very, very small, but I have managed to find here a game I don't have for the collection, which isn't bad. Over 3 CEX stores this episode, I've found 2 games I didn't need, but thankfully I don't collect for the PS Vita because that section was so tiny I've already missed it. But there was a surprisingly good selection of PSP games here, and again, this is a console which isn't too expensive to collect for at the moment. This is pretty cool and something I don't see in too many CEX stores, an Xbox Series X section. So that's really difficult to say, by the way. I presume these are all games that are either just released on the Xbox Series X or are optimised for it, rather than the separate Xbox One games. Let me know in the comments down below, again, if you know why they're in 2 separate sections. Here is a game which I believe is going to become more expensive in years to come because of licensing. I believe as well all the episodes are on that disc, but with Disney taking over the Marvel license, it's only a matter of time before that game gets delisted and thus more expensive. Finally, this time we are headed to the PlayStation 5 section, as I think I probably need to pick up one of these games because they're getting cheap and I want to pick up one of these cheap games. Let me know which one you'd have picked up. We have Battlefield 5, which for that price I think is worth a punt. Deathloop, which was one of the very first games I played that kind of made that jump up to this generation of gaming we are in at the moment. And if you haven't played it, it's an absolutely fantastic game. I played it on Games Pass, but I really want to experience it on PS5. I love the Evil Dead films, I love the TV show, and I'm presuming I'll love the video game, but it's an online only game and I'm mainly a single player, so I'm not sure which one to pick up. This one was very tempting, Watch Dogs Legion, but again, I think this can get cheaper, and This may come back in the future to bite me in the behind, but I think with these cheap PlayStation 5 games, they can only get cheaper. But that is the gamble and the stock market effect of CEX. You never know. So that was Felixstowe. It may have been a smaller store, it didn't have the greatest selection of retro, but who knows, these CEX stores change all the time, and the next time you visit it might be absolutely stacked with retro games. There's of course only one place to go before we head back to the games room. That is my local CEX in the city of Norwich, and this time I'm fancying a little bit of OG Xbox action, as they have a really good selection in at the moment. So I'm going to pick up Sega GT Online. No, I have that one. I was quite tempted by Alex McGee's Scrapland. I haven't seen this one before, so let me know in the comments down below if you've played that one. An absolute classic here, Silent Hill 4 The Room, which is still reasonably inexpensive, but there is one game here which is an absolute hidden gem, which not enough people talk about. It is one of my favourite games on the OG Xbox. It is Armed and Dangerous, an absolute gem, which is also still backwards compatible on the Xbox One. Now let's take it back to the games room for this and the other pickups. Here we are then, back in the games room after visiting 3 brand new CEX stores, and it just goes to show every single CEX, though they have their similarities, they are all very different and very special in their own different ways. So whenever I go to a CEX store, one of the main things I look for is retro games, but for me it's all about condition. Yes, you can do the CEX roulette and order from online, but I prefer to go in store and really get a literal hands-on approach to looking at these games. Games such as this. So I saw this on the shelf. Now this is a problem because it's very hard to judge a game by just seeing the spine, especially when it's absolutely covered in stickers, but I'm happy to say this Land of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse is in absolutely fantastic condition. Yes, it needs some stickers removing, and it may only be a £10 game, but of course it is fully complete with the manual and the cart. But here's the thing, even though this is only a £10 game, I'm still looking for these games to be in incredible condition, and for £10, when this is complete, is an absolute steal. We all know that CEX is an absolutely amazing place to pick up cheap retro games, but it is an absolute gamble. But sometimes when that gamble pays off, it makes it worth visiting the crazy world of CEX. Every time I visit a CEX store, I will always check out the Wii U section. That's because it seems there is less and less of these games on the market, and it is getting harder and harder to find them. Especially some of the cheaper games, games such as this, Lego Avengers, which you can still pick up for £3. But I feel in the years to come, the Wii U is going to become very hard to collect for. I think a lot of collectors are picking up these games now while they're cheap because there's not a massive amount of games released for the Wii U, and in a way, it was a bit of a Nintendo flop console, and these are the games which I think in the coming years are going to get very, very expensive. To a lesser extent, I think this is also true of PlayStation VR games. That's why I'm picking up these games as well at the moment, because no one else seems to be. And I think in the years to come, I think the PlayStation VR will be very collectible, again, for the same reason it wasn't as popular as people expected. That's why I'm picking up games such as this, Rigs. Yes, it is only a £3.50 game, and in theory, I'm not even sure if you can still play this, as I think it was like an online arena game, but I would rather pick these games up cheap now than regret it down the line. I have to admit, I'm a massive fan of the PlayStation VR. It might not have been a massive commercial success, but I think as a collector, it's going to become very, very desirable in the years to come. But let me know if you agree down in the comments below. Next up, we have our pickups from the Ipswich store, and I love collecting for the original Xbox. I've collected hardcore for the OG Xbox for about 5 or 6 years, and I think it is a console that gets nowhere near enough love. But here is the good thing, because not many people love collecting for the console as much as I do, you can get a lot of these games really cheap. And I have a general rule of thumb: if it is a game I either see very rarely or have never seen, I will always pick it up. And I very, very rarely see this game, Tony Hawk's 3, for the original Xbox. I don't know why, I just don't see this one very often, and the Tony Hawk's franchise is one of my favourite franchises in all of gaming. Now, it's quite common to see the value version of this, and I very rarely see the full artwork version, so when I saw this for £12 mint and complete, I had to pick it up. As a game collector over the years, you'll see certain franchises get more and more expensive, and this is more often the case when they announce either a remake or a remaster of one of the older games. So I believe that now is the time to pick up Silent Hill Homecoming for the Xbox 360 while it is still only £15. I believe from the bottom of my heart that all of the Silent Hill games, especially Silent Hill 2, are going to get more and more expensive in the coming years, especially as the hype builds up about the remaster of Silent Hill 2. But let me know in the comments down below. This could do the opposite and drive the price down of Silent Hill games, especially maybe Silent Hill 2, as people will have another way to replay this absolutely classic survival horror game. Now, I know there might not be as much love for these more recent entries into the Silent Hill franchise as there were for the classics on the PlayStation 1 and the PlayStation 2, but I still believe that now is the time to pick up these games. They are still some of the best survival horror games on the market, and I think these prices are not going to stay low for long. But let me know in the comments down below, what is your favourite Silent Hill game of all time, and if you are pumped for the remake of Silent Hill 2. Next up, we have our pickups from the Felixstowe store, and I've said it multiple times this video, now is the time to pick up Wii U games such as Lego Batman 2, because you can pick these games up for cheap now, and I genuinely believe in the future these games can be a lot harder to find and a lot more expensive. So grab them now while they're cheap. Without a shadow of a doubt, one of my favourite consoles to collect for is the Gamecube, and it doesn't have to be expensive to collect for the Gamecube. You can still get some absolute bargains in CEX, games such as Fireblade. So this game is only £6, this is boxed and complete, and this is one of the more challenging things when you go into a CEX store. When these are hidden in the glass cabinet of dreams, it can be hard to kind of judge the condition of these games because they may not be super retro, but I'm still looking for these games to be boxed and complete. And when I can pick up a boxed and complete Gamecube game for £6, I'm going to grab it. This next game is from one of my favourite franchises, and a franchise which I think seriously needs a comeback. And this was in fact the first game I ever played on the Gamecube, and it is Turok Evolution. My favourite movie of all time is still to this day Jurassic Park, and any game where you can shoot up and ride dinosaurs is a win in my book. It may not be the greatest Turok game of all time, it may have kind of signified the downfall of the entire franchise, but as the first Gamecube game I ever played, this game will always have a very special place in my heart. Our final pickup this time is from my local CEX store here in the fine city of Norwich, and without a doubt it is for me one of the best hidden gems on the OG Xbox, and it is a game that I do not hear enough people talking about. It is Armed and Dangerous, made by LucasArts, and this game is absolutely incredible. It is like a third-person shooting action adventure game. You control a small squad kind of trying to free this mythical land from like these tyrants that overrule it, and you do it with some of the most over-the-top weapons of all time, and it is home to one of my favourite guns of all time in any video game. Yes, it is a gun that fires sharks. This game is absolutely incredible. It is a real hidden gem, and for £4 it is a game that I implore you to pick up. Even if you do not have an original Xbox, this game is backwards compatible on both the Xbox 360 and the Xbox One, and I think in years to come this is a game which may become very, very desirable, so pick it up now, you will not regret it, especially for the £4 price tag.
Walls are too high to jump. Q, can you toss me? What? Can you toss me over? Oh, I could certainly try.
Based on our pickups this time, then I think it goes to show you can pick up some absolutely amazing games for cheap in CEX, which I believe are going to go up in value in the coming years. But it is all a gamble, because we all know shopping at CEX is like playing the stock market. Prices rise and prices fall, and it is all about buying and indeed selling at the same time. As a collector, you want to buy the games cheap, and as a reseller, if that's what you're doing, that's your prerogative. If you can buy some of these games cheap now, I genuinely believe you can sell them at a much greater price down the line. And as collectors, obviously want to build our incredible game collections at the cheapest price possible. There we have it then, folks. That is another episode of the crazy world of CEX, and 3 more CEX stores crossed off the list of the hundreds there is to visit worldwide. But make sure you hit that like button and subscribe, because who knows, maybe next time I'll be visiting your local CEX store in the crazy world of CEX. See you all soon.